If you've seen my March TBR, you will know that I was aiming to try and get some books cleared off my shelves and get some books cleared off my Kindle, and I think we've achieved that. So welcome to my March wrap-up. Welcome back, or if you are new here, welcome. My name is Katrina and I make bookish content here on this channel at least twice a week, and then movie reviews here at the weekend. In the description box below you will find all of my social links, including my blog and my Goodreads, where I post reviews of most of the things that I read. If you are new to my wrap-ups, I talk about what I have read in terms of the kind of books that I have read. I read ebooks, physical books, and audiobooks. Audiobooks is always my biggest category, but again, if you've been following for a while, you will know that. One of the major things this month for me was the Kindle Clear Out Readathon, and a lot of the books that I'm going to be talking about are featured in that video, so I will leave that linked up above so that you can go and get some more detailed thoughts on the things that I read whilst I was reading them. But let's kick off with the ebooks that I read this month. First of all, we have The World at My Feet by Katherine Isaac, which I have a whole video review for you. So if you want to know the full details on this one is adult fiction, and I have a whole review talking about it. So I will leave that up above, down below, anywhere you want to go and click away on that, and then come back and see the rest of this wrap up. Then also during the Kindle Clear Out Readathon, I read Her Last Holiday by C.L. Taylor, which is her latest adult thriller. This one comes out in the UK on the 29th of April and is also being published here in the US. I'm not sure on the release date on this one, but excitingly, it's going to be published here in the US as well, so that's very exciting. I do have a review of this one on my blog, but it won't be coming out until closer to publication date. But this thriller was excellent, and I actually really sort of related to one of the main characters in this one, which is a little bit worrying perhaps, I don't know, but it's just C.L. Taylor at her best. I will leave the interview that she came and graciously did on this channel linked up above, because she does talk a little bit about Her Last Holiday in that one. But yeah, I loved it. It was fantastic. Just these ebooks that I read this month were solid choices, just know that going into this video. Then very excitingly, last minute, I got a copy of The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary, which is also released in the UK on the 29th of April. 29th of April is a big release date in the UK. This one was slightly different than what I expected it to be. So we've got that mini on the front, and I was like, okay, we've got close quarters in a mini on a road trip. This is gonna, you know, put these characters in these uncomfortable situations. We got this kind of like almost like there's only one bed trope going on, but there's only one mini. So they're on a road trip to a friend's wedding in Scotland, and but it surprised me a little bit because we had some flashbacks to when these two characters first met on a sort of summer in France type of situation. And so the flashbacks and the flash forwards were really interesting, and boy do Addie and Dylan have these depths that we don't even know about when we first meet them at the beginning of the book. Beth O'Leary always writes, I don't know if maybe she used to be a screenwriter or she does screenwriting as well. Her books are always written so that I almost like visualize them as a movie or as a TV show as I'm reading them, and this one is no exception. This one would make an awesome movie. Like, I can just see it now. Think like, you know, when in the Bridget Jones movie, that famous "come the fuck on Bridget" line when they're all crammed into the mini. Imagine that, but like long term, and then flicking over to a little summer in France when they meet when they're younger. It was wonderful. Road Trip, Beth O'Leary, highly recommend, of course. And then one that I read during the Kindle Clear Out Readathon as well, we have Kate in Waiting, which is the latest book from Becky Albertalli, and this one comes out, I believe, in the US on the 19th of April or the 20th of April. Does that make sense? That Tuesday? 18th, 19th, 20th, it must be the 20th, there we go. And this one is her latest YA rom-com. We have the lovely Kate and her best friend, who are very much theatre kids. This one just reminded me a whole lot of Glee, but a whole lot more like diverse and relevant. Again, these characters have hidden depths, and I was just really glad that I was not a teenager in that situation as I was reading the book. But I really enjoyed it. I liked all of the theatre references. It does even reference Glee as well. It's got that Grease aspect of we met at summer camp, or we met in the summer and now he's turned up at my school thing going on, and I just really enjoyed it. And the romance in it was also a little bit unexpected as well. So there you have it. Definitely recommend that one. And then we move on to some physical books. Yes, we have some physical books this month. I have a physical proof that I read, and you will have to excuse the fact that it is a little bit bent because of the way this proof was bound. I had to destroy the spine just a little bit. It's kind of rounded just a bit. But this one is Flappy Entertains by Santa Montefiore, which is very different. If you are used to Santa Montefiore's kind of like historical, very much like whimsical countryside in Ireland or countryside in the UK somewhere, this is very different. Flappy is underneath her graceful exterior lies a passion nobody knew about, least of all Flappy herself. Flappy Scott Booth is self-appointed queen bee of Bradley Compton, a picturesque Devon village. And so, you know, she's like, oh yes, I jumped in the pool and of course it was the perfect dive. Anyone who'd seen it would say that it was the perfect dive. And I always throw the last party of the summer, and of course it's the one that everyone always talks about. So it's definitely, there's a lot of like tongue-in-cheek comedy here. And when a new couple moves into Bradley Compton, they are here to rock the boat and try and usurp Flappy's crown without her even realizing. You know, think about taking their seats at church. How awful. So yeah, there's a lot of comedy in this. It is definitely a quick read. I pretty much sat down and read this all in one go because it is 250 pages. However, this is the start of a new series, and so I'm excited to see what Flappy gets up to next, because yeah, she's kind of being pushed a little bit out of her comfort zone, and so I enjoy seeing that. And of course, Santa Montefiore's writing is always very engaging, and just the way she describes everything, you can always picture it so clearly. So when Flappy dives into that swimming pool, I can almost like feel that muggy heat that you get when you're around an indoor swimming pool. And when she's kind of like flapping about planning the party, you can kind of feel that as well. And she also has an assistant who I think is essential to the plot points and the storylines of this book. So just know that going into it. This is adult fiction, and it came out in the UK on the 4th of March, I believe. Then another one I did as a physical book was one book from my Gayle March reading. Yes, there is a big gap on my bookshelf behind me here because I have read my Gayle books, and most of these have stickers on that have been there for many years, so I'm not going to attempt to get them off. But I did read the physical copy of Mr. Commitment by Gayle. This one is about Duffy and his inability to commit to Mel, and kind of the fallout from all of that. A lot of soul searching. It's always interesting because a lot of these kind of like soul searching, thinking about my life and my future, living ahead books in this kind of rom-com genre are about women, written by women. So it's always interesting seeing that male point of view. Obviously Gayle is male and his main characters are male, and so in some ways they kind of all start off from a very similar position. But I think it's interesting seeing the road that he takes each of his characters down, and so seeing Duffy sort of come to terms with commitment or not was interesting. It was definitely a sort of quick and easy read. You can see it's not very thick. I think it's like yeah, just over 300 pages. So yeah, it was a different direction, and I read this one after having, I think, just read Turning 40, which I did on audio, so we'll come on to audiobooks now. So yes, I do have a copy of Turning 30 that I had read, and so I decided to move on from this one and read Turning 40, which revisits Matt Beckford, that's quite hard to say out loud, but it has the same narrator as I listened to the audiobook of Turning 30, and so it was nice to listen to that one and see what's going on with Matt now. His kind of conclusion of turning 30 has been thrown into disarray. He is finding himself once again single and kind of like struggling with similar things to what he did in turning 30, but he's now about to turn 40. So what's he going to do with that? I really like this kind of series following Matt. I wonder if we're going to get a turning 50 from him, because when was turning 30 published? Let's check. I think this is the large print version. It's definitely larger print than Mr. Commitment, but I would be interested to see what happens next with Matt. Yeah, this was published in 2000. So then if he was turning 30 in 2000, who's going to be turning 50 in 2020. So Gayle, we need a turning 50 and we need to revisit Matt and see what he's doing now, please and thank you. But yeah, I enjoyed revisiting this character, even though I read Turning 30 probably back in like 2012 maybe, when I kind of discovered Gayle after going to an event with him at Brixton Library, and then finding that my library in Slough had all of his audiobooks. That was a good time. But yeah, I really enjoyed revisiting this, and again, a bit like I said with Mr. Commitment, it's interesting seeing somebody going through this kind of like midlife crisis mode, starting over again mode that we often see from female writers to female characters. It was interesting seeing this perspective, but this was probably, turning 40 anyway, was probably my favourite that I read out of the 5 Gayle books that I read this month, just because it revisited a familiar character. I liked the plot, I liked the things that Gayle put Matt through, and just, yeah, I enjoyed reading it, and I read it as a buddy read with Haley that we read all 5 of the Gayle books with. Although again, a bit like last month when we read all our Christine and Lauren books, we haven't discussed the final book that we read. It's like it gets to the end of the month and we're like, we're too busy to talk about what we're reading. We're just trying to finish everything up. It's very funny. And then another one I did on audio that I have a physical and an e-proof of is Seeing Other People. This one is probably the most different out of everything I've read from Gayle. His writing has definitely evolved, and I think this was like the turning point, but it goes in like a bit of a kind of like little journey off. It's like we go off on a slip road and then we get back on to a different motorway, and this was the slip road, because this one kind of features a little bit of kind of supernatural, a little bit, and I don't know if it was that or if it's just kind of, I don't know. The main character I didn't really warm to in this one. I love the narration and I like the depth of story, and this one's definitely got a decent length as well. This is 360 pages, and came out in 2014, so like there's a big gap here. But here's the little like blurb bit on the back here, a little quote. With the exception of my lack of a hangover, how could I have drunk so much that I'd forgotten the whole night and yet didn't have so much of a headache? It all made sense. After the best part of 20 years of faithfulness, I'd done one thing I'd never dreamed I'd do. I'd cheated on my wife. And so our main character, you know, spends most of the book thinking that he has cheated on his wife, and we kind of see him getting together with some single dads that he met through being a journalist and asking these single dads to kind of appear on or write about their experience. I can't remember if it was appear on a TV show or write about something. I think maybe it was a bit of both. So I really liked that, and I liked the relationship that these guys formed. I loved that male friendship and seeing that come to the forefront, but I didn't like what he was doing with his wife and kids, with the thought that he cheated on her, but he just automatically thought that his wife should forgive him, and I think that just kind of left a sour taste in my mouth the whole time. So I liked seeing him form this bond with these other single dads, and I liked seeing him doing some soul searching, but then the cheating aspect and this almost supernatural aspect that I'm not going to go into because I don't want to spoil anything, just kind of like it didn't sit great with me. It's interesting. I wonder if I'd have looked upon this differently when I got it as a proof. So because this came out in August, it was sent to me at the school that I worked in, so I didn't get it till the September, which I think is why I ended up leaving it and not reading it until 7 years later. But yeah, I wonder if I'd read it then, if I would think differently. However, we have another book that also tackles some similar issues, which was obviously another Mike Gayle book. So we have Wish You Were Here, which the sticker of this one is on the back. But this one also kind of like covers cheating, and I never like when that happens in a book and there are consequences, but it's like, oh, but it all worked out in the end, because like so often that just doesn't happen, and that's not something that sits well with me. However, love the cover of this one, much prefer this cover to the new cover, and this one deals with 3 guys, 1 girl, one hell of a holiday. These guys are basically just a tad too old to do an 1830 holiday, but decide to try and like relive their youth and kind of like pick up now they're not feeling so young and go on this 1830 holiday to kind of make themselves feel better about life. Yeah, I like the holiday aspect of it. I like the fact that these guys were all kind of like going through different things in their lives, even though they're at the same point in their lives. But then there was some aspect of cheating in here that just, yeah, wasn't great. This one was definitely lighter than Seeing Other People and lighter than Turning 40. A similar lightness to Mr. Commitment. I think this is definitely in the kind of like pre-seeing, well, it is in the pre-Seeing Other People era of Mike Gayle's writing, which I do enjoy and is very funny, but again, it kind of deals with cheating, so I like the holiday aspect. I liked everything apart from the cheating, and it really made me want to go on holiday, and it really did remind me of when I went on an 1830s holiday, when I wasn't older than 30, I have to say. I was 23, 22, 21 maybe. But yeah, I did that, and it was all very like true to life with that. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I liked the narration of the audiobook, but there were certain aspects I didn't like. And then we have the final Mike Gayle March book, which is The To-Do List, which is his non-fiction book. And I really liked everything about this because it was so funny, and it shows that Mike Gayle's own humor is very much the same as the humor that he puts in his books. And so it's kind of like the very like deadpan, like I found myself laughing out loud in my car as I was listening to this audiobook. I was listening to it in the gym and laughing out loud. 1 man, 2 birthdays, and a 1,277 item to-do list. Spurred on by a desire to be more organised, Mike Gayle has drawn up a to-do list containing every single item he's been meaning to do but just keeps putting off, covering everything from reading War and Peace to clean gunk from bathroom U-bend and tell parents I love them, through to work out how to reset the clock on the DVD player. Mike begins the task of a lifetime. The only thing that would have made this a solid like 5-star read for me would be if he had narrated the audiobook himself. So if you are just reading the book, that's not like an aspect that you'll have to worry about, and it would definitely be a solid 5-star read. However, because I was doing the audio, I was really hoping that he would be the narrator of this one, but it was someone else that narrated it, and I was like, but I know what Mike Gayle sounds like, and you sound nothing like Mike Gayle. You sound like you're about 20 and like you've literally just left school. And Mike Gayle is not just 20 and just left school. So yeah, I wonder again if we're going to get a kind of updated version of this one, because this one was a little while ago now. Where does this come in the list? So this is after Turning 30, which was 2010. Oh no, look, maybe that version of Turning 30 was earlier than 2010, maybe because it was the large print, but this is 2009. So I'm like, where are we now that he's just got a kind of lifetime achievement award from the RNA? are we going to get an updated version of this one? And will the audio be narrated by Gayle? That's what I want to know. But yeah, I enjoyed this one. And again, it's interesting getting a non-fiction book from a writer who normally writes rom-coms. I would like more of that, please. I would love to know, you know, have other non-fiction books from rom-com writers in particular. And then scrolling back to the Kindle Clear Out Readathon, I listened to Difficult Women, A History of Feminism in 11 Fights, which is kind of exactly what it says on the tin. And I talk in more detail about that one in that video, so you'll have to go away and watch that one. And then a book versus movie one that I will leave linked up above. We have Moxie by Jennifer Mathieu, which I loved the book. I listened to the audio, it was epic. I watched the movie, it was also epic. I talk in more detail in that video, so I will leave that one linked up above and you can go away and see that one. But again, I was like, how did I wait this long to read this book? I should have read it earlier. Then apparently this was the month of me reading rom-coms from male authors, because I read Girl 99 by Andy Jones, which was part of my Kindle Clear Out reading because I had a NetGalley copy of this one. I ended up listening to this on audio. I was really unsure what I made of this one until I actually sat down to write my written review, so I will leave that linked in the description box, like a full link to the blog post on that one, because it was when I sat down and wrote my written review of it, I was like, yeah, I didn't like this book. I did not like this book. This is a guy who's slept with like 70 odd people and decides that by a certain, it's by the anniversary of when he lost his virginity that he sleep with 100 people. So he gets to his century by his like virginity anniversary. And like just talking about the concept now, I'm like, yeah. So this wasn't written that long ago, but the kind of like laddish behavior that we excused then just would not get excused today. And so I think this book has just not aged well, even though it's not that old. There were some moments that made me laugh out loud, but then we'd get back to the whole subject of like, oh well, where are we at with how many people you'd slept with. The one redeeming quality of this book was that we have a character who we met in Andy Jones' debut, just the two of us, or the two of us, I can never remember if it's got a just or not, which I loved. And the sort of best friend character from that book is also in this book, and he is somebody who is living with a chronic illness and is still an amazing person, and I really liked getting to catch up with him again. But yeah, that's really the only redeeming quality of this book. So yeah, did not like this one. And yeah, I can kind of, it's interesting, I read other people's reviews of it and they didn't seem to pick up on anything that I picked up on, but I wonder if reading it when it was released literally just a few years ago, it maybe didn't stand out as much. I don't know, but yeah, not great. Don't recommend this one. I mean, the audio was fine. What more can you say, really? And then I listened to, which I cannot find here at all. Apparently I don't have a picture of this one, but I listened to Cherry by Nico Walker, which I made a whole book versus movie talking about, which I will leave linked up above. I enjoyed it way more than I thought I would. I didn't think that I would enjoy the subject matter at all, because it deals with somebody going to war and kind of the PTSD and the fallout from that and their general decline. It is semi-autobiographical, and so that kind of hit me even harder, but I actually took way more away from this than I thought. I think going into books like this where you see a young person with so much potential and then things go really wrong for them, as a teacher who's, you know, released young people out into the world with a whole lot of potential, I'm like, I don't want to think of anyone like, you know, going in the direction that they did, anyone that I've ever taught, but I'm sure it happens. But I think that's where it just hits me on a different level. But I go into a little bit more detail in that video, so you can go away and watch my book versus movie. And then a couple of very sort of random non-fiction books, which I'd almost kind of forgotten that I listened to, that I obviously just picked up because my haul came in from the library. So this is one that I heard about at a library book party, and so I borrowed it on audio and listened to it. This is Hear From It, which is a collection of essays by R. Eric Thomas, and this is Here for It, or How to Save Your Soul in America. So he talks about his experience of being Black in America and the ways it has affected his life and the ways it has affected relationships with those around him in various different essays. The essays are all separate but connected, so I did listen to it just from start to finish, but it is definitely one that you could pick up and put down. And I think the essays were done for different places as well, so it was an interesting listen. It wasn't anything necessarily radical compared to other things that I've listened to on a similar topic, but it was another voice to add to that mix, and so I was happy to read it. And like I say, it was recommended to me at a library book party and I picked it up, and it was, you know, if you are looking for something else to read on the subject of being Black today in America, I recommend. I like the fact that it's about that experience, but it has a pink cover. I've drawn to the cover, and another book with a pink cover that popped up. So I had never heard of this person, and now I have kind of gone back and looked into where she's come from. It's interesting. So I was going into this book not knowing anything about the writer, and so I think that is definitely a different experience from a lot of people who would pick this book up. But this is Girl with No Job by Claudia Oshry, and this is the crazy beautiful life of an Instagram thirst monster. And this was interesting because, yeah, I hadn't listened to or seen the Instagram account for Girl with No Job, but one of the most interesting things about this is that she talks about cancel culture from the point of view of someone who had tweets surface from a few years ago that ended up getting her basically cancelled. And so I really thought that that was an interesting point of view. She again talks a lot about identity and the identity of someone who will always be a little bit fat, and somebody who is Jewish but growing up in a very sort of waspy community. I really enjoyed what she has to say, and she narrates it herself, and so it was just an interesting different thing to pick up that popped up on overdrive as I was scrolling through new audiobooks. I was like, okay, we'll give that one a go, and yeah, pretty much just listened to it when I was out and about in the car and enjoyed it. And I now follow her on Instagram, and yeah, it's just not anything groundbreaking, but I enjoyed it. I did not know anything about her to begin with, and I thought it was fairly well written and edited and put together, and so I liked the kind of journey that I went on with her. So there you have it. I feel like I read everything except one book that was on my TBR, and that one book is on my April TBR and is on there because my blog tour position for it isn't until May, and I'm also doing it as a buddy read with Haley, so that's why we shifted it up. So it's not like I just forgot to get to it, it's the fact that I actually actively moved it onto my April TBR. But yeah, I don't feel like as I was putting the wrap up together, I was like, oh, I didn't read an awful lot this month, but I've been aiming, as I say, to clear out my shelves and to clear out my virtual shelves. And so in that sense, I did do that because I read, 4 things off my NetGalley shelves, and then I read 6 things off my NetGalley shelves and cleared 5 things off my physical bookshelf, and then had a couple of bonus reads that were book to movie things. So actually, in terms of like what I focused on reading this month, I did well with that, even though I didn't read a whole lot this month. It was quite a challenging month. If you've watched that Kindle clear out readathon video, you will know. Just, yeah, March was tough. I'm really hoping that April's going to be better. Let's all put that out into the universe, that we're going to have a better April than we had March. It just wasn't great. But yes, let me know in the comments, A, if you've made it this far, because apparently I rambled on for half an hour, but B, what was your favourite read in the month of March? Did you have any goals? If so, did you achieve them? Did you move anything onto April? What's going on with your reading? Talk to me. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure you are subscribed so that my next video lands in your subscription feed, and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of my future content. I will be back with some Oscar nominated movie reviews for you, as well as some more bookish content. So I will see you then. Thanks for watching.